I sit here in blood-stained scrubs in the pediatric ICU waiting room at 3 in the morning, clutching my unconscious daughter Sophie's torn backpack. My phone buzzes with cruel texts from my mother. "You made your choice when you had that baby, not our circus anymore." Sophie lies in critical condition after a devastating car accident caused by my ex-boyfriend driving drunk with Sophie in the back seat. My family has abandoned me completely. I'm broke alone and Sophie might not survive the night. Then a distinguished stranger in an expensive suit sits beside me. 6 hours earlier, everything felt normal. I was finishing my shift at Dr. Peterson's dental clinic, looking forward to a quiet Friday evening with Sophie. My phone rang and Marcus's name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer. "Hey Freddie, I know it's last minute, but can I take Sophie tonight? I promised her we'd go to that new arcade downtown." Every instinct screamed no. Marcus had been unreliable for months, showing up late for his weekend visits, returning Sophie with stories that didn't quite add up. But Sophie loved her father despite his flaws, and I couldn't bear to disappoint her again. "Fine, but have her back by 9 tomorrow morning. We're going to the farmer's market." "Sure thing, babe. Love you both." The words felt hollow, but I pushed my doubts aside. When Marcus arrived to pick up Sophie, she bounded out to his BMW with her overnight bag, chattering excitedly about the arcade games she wanted to try. I watched them drive away, that familiar knot of anxiety settling in my stomach. At 11:37 that night, my phone shattered my sleep. Unknown number. Hospital. "Ma'am, this is Nurse Bradley from Children's Memorial Hospital. Your daughter, Sophie Martinez, was brought in from a motor vehicle accident. You need to come immediately." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of panic and prayers. Sophie unconscious, multiple internal injuries. The police officer's words hit me like physical blows. Marcus's BMW had flipped 3 times on Highway 94. He'd fled the scene on foot, leaving my baby trapped and bleeding in the wreckage. I called my mother, first hands shaking as I dialed. "Mom, please, Sophie's been in an accident. She's in intensive care. I need you." Silence stretched between us before Patricia's cold voice cut through. "This is what happens when you choose losers over family, Freddie. You made your bed with that druggie. Now deal with it yourself." "She's your granddaughter. She could die." "Should have thought about that before you spread your legs for trash. Don't call here again." The line went dead. I tried my sister Janet next, desperate for any family support. "Janet, Sophie's hurt badly. The doctors don't know if she'll make it. Can you come to the hospital?" "I warned you about Marcus 100 times. You never listen. Now you want us to clean up your mess. Handle your own problems, Freddie." Click. Dial tone. Even my father refused to take my call, letting it go straight to voicemail. At the hospital, Detective Murphy pulled me aside with devastating news. Marcus hadn't been driving Sophie to an arcade. Traffic cameras showed him heading toward the industrial district, toward a known drug corridor. My 7-year-old daughter had been in that car when Marcus went to meet his cocaine supplier. The impact analysis shows he was driving over 80 miles per hour. Detective Murphy explained, his voice gentle but firm. "There were small plastic bags scattered around the vehicle. We believe your ex-boyfriend was transporting narcotics with your daughter in the car." My legs gave out. Sophie, my innocent little girl who still believed in fairy tales and left cookies for Santa, had been used as cover for drug dealing. The man I'd trusted with her life had put her in unthinkable danger. Dr. Amanda Torres, the pediatric surgeon, found me collapsed in the hallway. "Mrs. Martinez, Sophie has suffered severe internal injuries. Her spleen is ruptured and we're monitoring for potential brain trauma. The next 24 hours are critical." As Dr. Torres spoke about surgery schedules and trauma protocols, all I could think about was Sophie's bright smile that morning, how she'd hugged me extra tight before leaving with Marcus. Had some part of her known? Had she sensed the danger? The surgical waiting room became my prison. Hours crawled by as teams of doctors worked to save my daughter's life. Every time a nurse emerged through those double doors, my heart stopped, terrified of the news they might bring. At 3:15 in the morning, exhaustion and despair had settled into my bones like winter cold. I'd been alone for 4 hours, clutching Sophie's torn backpack, when soft footsteps approached across the polished hospital floor. "Excuse me, may I sit here?" I looked up to see a man in his early 50s dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit despite the late hour. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his kind brown eyes held a depth of understanding that caught me off guard. Everything about him spoke of wealth and success, from his polished leather shoes to the expensive watch glinting on his wrist. "It's a free country," I mumbled, too tired to be polite. He settled beside me with careful grace, maintaining respectful distance. For several minutes, we sat in silence, watching the controlled chaos of the pediatric ICU through the glass partition. Nurses moved between rooms like guardian angels, monitoring machines that beeped steadily in the darkness. "I lost my daughter 3 years ago," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of profound grief. "Emma was 8. Drunk driver ran a red light on Elm Street. She was walking home from school." Something in his tone made me turn to study his profile. Despite his obvious wealth and polished appearance, genuine pain flickered across his features. "I'm sorry for your loss," I whispered, the automatic response feeling inadequate. Her name was Emma Catherine Walsh. She wanted to be a veterinarian, loved rescuing stray cats in our neighborhood. The driver who killed her was 17, son of a prominent family. He received 6 months in juvenile detention. The injustice in his words sparked recognition. This man understood the helpless rage of watching the system fail your child. "I'm Dr. Harrison Walsh. I own this hospital chain, among other things. But more importantly, I'm a father who knows what it feels like to sit in rooms like this, praying for miracles that might never come." Freddie Martinez. That's my daughter, Sophie, in surgery. 7 years old. Her father put her in danger, my family abandoned us, and I don't know if she'll survive the night. Harrison turned to face me fully, his expression intensifying with purpose. "Tell me about Sophie." Something about his genuine interest broke through my defenses. "She's everything good in this world, loves butterflies and chocolate chip pancakes, reads chapter books way above her grade level, still sleeps with her stuffed elephant named Peanut. She trusts everyone sees the best in people even when they don't deserve it. Like her father." The question cut deep. I thought Marcus loved her. I thought he'd grown up, gotten clean. Sophie adored him, and I didn't want to be the mother who kept a daughter from her father. "And now you're blaming yourself for trusting him." It wasn't a question. Harrison saw straight through to the guilt consuming me from the inside. "Dr. Torres is the finest pediatric trauma surgeon in 3 states, Harrison said, pulling out his phone. "But I'm calling in additional specialists. Dr. Richard Chen from Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Sarah Williams from Mayo Clinic. If anyone can save Sophie, we'll make sure she has the best possible care." "I can't afford specialists. I work at a dental clinic. My insurance barely covers basic treatment." "You're not paying for anything. Emma's foundation covers all medical expenses for families facing pediatric trauma. It's what Emma would have wanted." For the first time in hours, hope flickered in my chest. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know us." Harrison's smile was sad but genuine. "Because 3 years ago, I sat where you're sitting, and no one sat beside me. Because Sophie deserves every fighting chance. And because sometimes helping others heal is the only way we learn to heal ourselves." Dr. Torres appeared through the surgical doors, her scrubs showing the evidence of hours spent fighting for my daughter's life. Harrison stood immediately, transforming from grieving father to hospital owner with quiet authority. "Dr. Torres, this is Dr. Walsh. He's arranged for additional consultation on Sophie's case." Dr. Torres's eyes widened slightly, recognizing Harrison's reputation. "Mr. Walsh, of course. Sophie's surgery went well considering the extensive trauma. We've repaired the splenic laceration and addressed the internal bleeding. However, we're still monitoring for signs of traumatic brain injury." "What's her prognosis?" Harrison asked the question I was too terrified to voice. "Guarded but optimistic. The next 48 hours will tell us more about potential neurological effects. She's young and strong, which works in her favor. Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I swayed on my feet. Harrison steadied me with a gentle hand on my elbow. "Can I see her?" I whispered. "She's being moved to pediatric intensive care. You can sit with her, but she'll remain sedated for several more hours." Following Dr. Torres through the maze of hospital corridors, I felt Harrison walking beside me like a protective presence. In the span of an hour, he'd transformed my worst nightmare into something survivable. Sophie might live. That was enough for now. Sophie looked impossibly small in the pediatric ICU bed, surrounded by machines that monitored every breath and heartbeat. Her face was bruised, but peaceful dark hair spread across the white pillowcase like a crown. I took her tiny hand in mine, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "I'm here, baby girl. Mommy's here." Harrison had quietly arranged for a comfortable chair beside Sophie's bed and somehow procured hospital blankets that actually provided warmth. Every 30 minutes he checked in without being intrusive, ensuring I had coffee, food, or simply silent company. Around noon on Saturday, harsh voices echoed down the ICU corridor, growing louder as they approached. My stomach clenched with recognition. Patricia's voice sharp with indignation, Janet's whining tone complaining about parking fees and wasted time. They swept into Sophie's room like a cold front, bringing tension and judgment with them. Patricia wore her church dress, the navy blue one she reserved for funerals and other serious occasions. Janet had dressed down deliberately jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, making a statement about the inconvenience of this visit. "Well, look at this mess," Patricia announced, surveying Sophie's condition with the detachment of a coroner. "Poor child pays for her mother's stupidity." "Hello, Mom. Thank you for coming." I tried to keep my voice steady, hoping against hope that seeing Sophie might soften their hearts. "We're not here to comfort you, Freddie. We're here to fix this situation before it gets worse." Patricia pulled a manila folder from her purse, setting it on the bedside table with authority. "These are custody transfer documents. You're going to sign them." "What are you talking about?" Janet stepped forward with practiced cruelty. "Face facts, Freddie. You can't take care of this child. Look what happened when you trusted her with that drug dealer. Social services is going to remove her anyway. Better she goes to a proper family now. Sophie is my daughter. I would never give her up." "You already did," Patricia said coldly, opening the folder to reveal legal paperwork. "The moment you chose Marcus over family, the moment you decided to live paycheck to paycheck instead of accepting help, the moment you proved you care more about your pride than her safety." "I've done everything for Sophie. I worked 2 jobs to provide for her. I've never put her in danger." "Except last night," Janet interrupted. "Except every time you let that criminal around her. Except raising her in that tiny apartment in a bad neighborhood because you're too stubborn to move home where she'd be safe." Patricia moved closer to Sophie's bed, studying her granddaughter's unconscious form with calculated assessment. "She could have been killed because of your poor judgment. How many more chances will you take with her life?" "The accident wasn't my fault. Marcus lied to me about where they were going." "Because you're too naive to see the truth about people," Janet said. "Just like Dad. Just like every loser you've ever dated. You have terrible judgment, and now an innocent child pays the price." "These papers transfer custody to the state," Patricia continued as if I hadn't spoken. "They'll place her with a proper family, people with resources, stability values, people who won't let drug dealers babysit their children. I will never sign those papers. Sophie belongs with me." "And then you're even more selfish than I thought." Patricia's voice turned vicious. "That child deserves better than a mother who can't even keep her safe for one weekend. Look at her, Freddie. Look what your choices did to her." The words hit like physical blows. Looking at Sophie's bruised face, part of me wondered if they were right. Had my trust in Marcus been criminal negligence? Was I really too poor, too naive, too damaged to protect my own daughter? "If you don't sign willingly, we'll testify against you in court," Janet added. "We'll tell them about every time you called crying about money, every bad relationship, every questionable decision. We'll make sure they know exactly what kind of mother you are." "You're my family," I whispered, devastated by their coordinated attack. "How can you do this to us?" "We tried to help you for years," Patricia said without a trace of warmth. "You refused good advice, rejected decent men, insisted on doing everything the hard way. Now Sophie pays for your stubborn pride. We won't watch you destroy another generation." "Get out!" Harrison's voice cut through the room like a blade. None of us had noticed him entering. "Both of you, leave immediately." Patricia drew herself up with indignation. "And who exactly are you to tell us anything? Another one of Freddie's questionable boyfriends?" "I'm Dr. Harrison Walsh, owner of this hospital. Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily. This child needs healing, not harassment." "We're her family," Janet protested. "We have rights." "You have the right to remain silent while this child recovers. Use it." Harrison moved between them and Sophie's bed with protective authority. "If you return without invitation, you'll be banned from hospital property." Patricia grabbed her custody papers, shooting me a look of pure contempt. "This isn't over, Freddie. That child will be removed from your care. The only question is whether you'll cooperate or force us to drag this through the courts. Think about what's best for Sophie, not what's best for your ego," Janet added as they prepared to leave. "For once in your life, put someone else first." After they left, I collapsed into the chair beside Sophie's bed, their words echoing in my mind. Harrison quietly closed the door, giving us privacy from the curious stares of passing staff. "They're wrong about you," he said simply. "Are they? Look at her, Harrison. Look what trusting Marcus did to my baby." "Marcus is responsible for Marcus's choices. You're responsible for yours. And your choice right now is to fight for Sophie, not surrender to people who see her as a burden instead of a blessing." "But what if they're right about me being unfit? What if I can't protect her?" Harrison sat in the visitor's chair, considering his words carefully. 3 years ago, people told me Emma's death was just a tragic accident, that I should accept it and move on. They said pursuing justice wouldn't bring her back. They were right about that last part, but they were wrong about accepting injustice. "What did you do?" "I learned the difference between accepting responsibility for my actions and accepting blame for other people's choices. You didn't put Sophie in that car with a drunk drug dealer. Marcus did. Your family's cruelty doesn't reflect your worth as a mother. It reflects their character." For the first time since the accident, I felt something stronger than despair. Harrison was right. This wasn't about my worthiness. This was about Sophie's future, and I would fight for her with everything I had. Sunday morning brought a fragile sense of hope. Sophie's vital signs had remained stable throughout the night, and Dr. Torres spoke optimistically about her body's healing response. I'd managed a few hours of sleep in the reclining chair, waking each time the monitors changed rhythm or a nurse entered for routine checks. Harrison arrived early with fresh coffee and breakfast sandwiches from a bakery downtown. His presence had become a comfort, his quiet strength helping me navigate each crisis as it emerged. "Any changes overnight?" he asked, studying Sophie's chart with the practiced eye of someone familiar with medical terminology. "Dr. Torres thinks we might be able to reduce her sedation later today. She wants Sophie to wake up gradually, but she's optimistic about brain function." "That's excellent news. Sophie's young brain has remarkable healing capacity." We were discussing physical therapy options when alarms began shrieking throughout the ICU. Sophie's monitors erupted in urgent beeping numbers, flashing red on multiple screens. Her blood pressure dropped precipitously, while her heart rate spiked into dangerous territory. "Code Blue Room 307, Code Blue Room 307. Dr. Torres burst through the door, followed by a team of specialists. I was quickly moved aside as they surrounded Sophie's bed, working with practiced urgency that terrified me more than any words could have. "What's happening to her?" I asked, but the medical team was too focused to respond. "Internal bleeding," I heard Dr. Torres say. "Get her to OR 2 immediately." The next 4 hours blurred together in a haze of terror and desperate prayer. Harrison remained beside me in the surgical waiting room, making phone calls to coordinate additional specialists while I paced the sterile corridors like a caged animal. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Dr. Torres emerged looking exhausted but relieved. We found the source of bleeding and repaired it successfully. Sophie is stable, but it was touch and go for about 20 minutes. Her heart stopped twice during surgery. But she's okay now. She's alive and stable. That's what matters right now. Before I could process this update fully, Detective Murphy appeared with a grim expression that sent ice through my veins. Ms. Martinez, I need to speak with you about Marcus Rodriguez and new developments in your daughter's case. We moved to a private conference room where Detective Murphy spread photos and documents across the table like evidence of a crime I didn't understand. Marcus was arrested this morning at a motel near the Canadian border. During questioning, he made several statements about you that require investigation. What kind of statements? He claims you were aware of his drug-dealing activities, says you regularly allowed Sophie to accompany him on what he called business trips. He's provided text messages allegedly from you discussing these arrangements. The room spun around me. That's completely false. I never knew about any drug dealing. I thought he was taking her to normal places like parks and restaurants. Marcus also claims you were his business partner, helping him distribute narcotics in exchange for child support payments above what the court ordered. I never received anything beyond court-ordered support, and that was always late. This is insane. Detective Murphy's expression remained neutral but sympathetic. I have to inform you that Child Protective Services has been notified of these allegations. They'll be conducting a full investigation into Sophie's home environment and your fitness as a guardian. But none of it's true. Marcus is lying to save himself. I believe you, Ms. Martinez, but the law requires investigation of all allegations involving child endangerment regardless of source credibility. Harrison leaned forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. Detective Murphy, what evidence does Marcus have to support these allegations? Text messages from a phone number registered to Ms. Martinez discussing drug pickup locations and using Sophie as camouflage for deliveries. May I see these messages? Detective Murphy hesitated, then showed us screenshots on his tablet. The messages were damning, discussing specific drug quantities and using Sophie's playdates as cover for illegal activities. I never sent these messages, I said immediately. Someone else sent them from my number. How is that possible? Detective Murphy asked. Harrison studied the message timestamps carefully. When did Marcus have access to your phone, Freddie? Last month when I was in the bathroom at the restaurant. He said he needed to make a call because his battery died. I let him use mine for maybe 10 minutes. Long enough to install spyware or cloning software, Harrison said with growing certainty. Detective Murphy, I'd like to have these messages analyzed by our cybersecurity team. I suspect they'll find evidence of digital manipulation. We can arrange for independent verification, Detective Murphy agreed. But until then, CPS will proceed with their investigation. As if summoned by our conversation, a stern woman in a gray suit appeared in the doorway. Diana Foster, according to her identification badge, senior investigator with Child Protective Services. Ms. Martinez, I'm here to discuss Sophie's placement once she's medically cleared for discharge. Sophie will be going home with me, I said firmly. Diana Foster's smile was cold and professional. I'm afraid that's not possible given the current allegations. Sophie will be placed in emergency foster care while we conduct a thorough investigation of her home environment. The words hit me like another physical blow. After everything after Sophie surviving surgery and beginning to heal the system was going to tear us apart anyway. How long will the investigation take? Harrison asked. These cases typically require 6 to 12 months for complete resolution. During that time, Ms. Martinez will have supervised visitation rights, assuming she cooperates fully with our investigation. 6 months. I felt my world collapsing completely. Sophie will think I abandoned her. Ms. Martinez, our primary concern is Sophie's safety and well-being. Given the allegations against you and the traumatic circumstances of her injury, temporary placement is the appropriate precaution. Harrison was taking detailed notes, his expression growing more focused with each revelation. Something in his demeanor suggested this was about more than helping one family. Ms. Foster, what documentation do you need from the hospital regarding Sophie's care and prognosis? Standard medical reports and discharge planning recommendations. We'll also need character references and employment verification for Ms. Martinez. After Diana Foster left, I sat in stunned silence watching my daughter's future disappear into bureaucratic procedures and false allegations. Marcus had destroyed our family even from jail, using lies to ensure I lost Sophie permanently. "This isn't over," Harrison said quietly, his voice carrying a determination that surprised me. "Diana Foster has just made a very serious mistake." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Sophie's case has become much more important than either of us realized, and Ms. Foster has no idea what she's walked into." Harrison's phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, his expression darkening with each word. "What is it?" I asked. "That was my private investigator. She's found something about Marcus's family connections that changes everything. We need to talk privately, away from hospital monitoring." "But Sophie is safe here. What I'm about to tell you will determine whether she ever comes home or disappears into a system designed to destroy families like yours." Harrison led me to his private office on the hospital's executive floor, a space that spoke of understated power with its mahogany furniture and panoramic city views. He closed the door, carefully activating a white noise machine before speaking. "What I'm about to share with you must stay between us until we're ready to act. Lives depend on absolute discretion." My hands shook as I accepted the chair he offered. "What did your investigator find?" "Diana Foster arrived at the hospital with photographs of your apartment that were taken without your knowledge or consent." He opened his laptop, showing me surveillance-quality images of my living room, kitchen, and Sophie's bedroom. In several photos, small plastic bags and white powder residue were visible on surfaces where they'd never been before. "Marcus had access to your apartment. He planted evidence to support his false allegations." The violation felt overwhelming. "He still has keys from when we were together. I never thought to change the locks because I trusted him with Sophie." Diana Foster knew about this evidence before she arrived at the hospital. She came prepared to remove Sophie from your custody, regardless of your explanations or protestations. "How is that possible?" Harrison pulled up additional files on his computer. "My investigator, Kelly Santos, has been monitoring unusual Child Protective Services cases for the past 2 years. Diana Foster has a pattern of targeting single mothers from working-class backgrounds, particularly women of color." The screen showed dozens of case files, each representing a family destroyed by Foster's investigations. "She removes children from loving homes using fabricated evidence and questionable allegations." But why? What's her motive? "Money. Foster receives bonuses for each child she places in the system. More importantly, she receives additional payments for children who are adopted through private agencies rather than reunited with their families." "That's legal." "Technically, yes. The system is designed to incentivize permanent placements over family reunification. But Foster has been manipulating cases, manufacturing evidence, and collaborating with corrupt officials to ensure children never return home." My mind struggled to process this information. How many families has she destroyed? 43 that we can document, probably more. The children are typically placed with affluent families who pay substantial fees to private adoption agencies. It's human trafficking disguised as child protection. Harrison showed me financial records linking Diana Foster to Judge William Brennan's wife's charitable foundation. Monthly payments of $5,000, always deposited within 48 hours of a successful child removal. Judge Brennan handles family court cases in this district. He consistently rules against family reunification when Foster recommends permanent placement. So the system is rigged from the beginning. Completely. Foster identifies vulnerable targets, manufactures evidence of neglect or abuse, and Judge Brennan rubber stamps her recommendations. The families never had a chance. What about the children? What happens to them? Harrison's expression grew even grimmer. Most are adopted by wealthy families who believe they're rescuing children from abusive situations. They pay premium fees to agencies that promise healthy young children with no family complications. And the agencies, 3 private adoption companies in the region split the profits with Foster and Judge Brennan. It's a multi-million-dollar operation disguised as child welfare. I thought about Sophie unconscious and vulnerable in her hospital bed already marked for removal by this corrupt system. How do we stop them? We build an airtight case documenting the entire network, then present it to federal authorities simultaneously with media exposure. They've been operating in shadows, but exposure destroys their power. How long will that take? We've been gathering evidence for 2 years. Sophie's case gives us the final pieces we need. Foster became overconfident, moving too quickly without proper precautions. Harrison pulled up additional files showing surveillance photos of Diana Foster meeting with Judge Brennan at expensive restaurants, always paying cash and never creating paper trails. Kelly Santos has been documenting their communications through electronic surveillance. We have recordings of them discussing specific families and calculating profit margins for different placement scenarios. Is that legal? Kelly is a former FBI agent specializing in public corruption cases. Everything she's gathered is admissible in federal court. What do we do about Sophie's case specifically? We play along with their investigation while documenting every illegal action they take. Foster doesn't know we're watching her, so she'll continue making mistakes. But Sophie could be placed in foster care while we're building this case. Not if we act quickly enough. I have emergency custody options through the hospital's patient advocacy program. We can delay Foster's placement recommendations while your case is under review. Harrison made several phone calls, each conversation coded but purposeful. Legal teams, investigators, federal contacts, media relationships. I watched him orchestrate a complex response with the efficiency of someone who'd planned for this moment. Freddie, I need you to understand something crucial. This fight is bigger than just saving Sophie. 43 other children have been stolen from their families. If we succeed, we can reunite them with their real parents. And if we fail, Sophie disappears into the system forever, and Diana Foster continues destroying families with impunity. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. Sophie's case had become the key to exposing an entire network of corruption and child trafficking. What do I need to do? Act naturally around Foster and Judge Brennan. Don't let them know you suspect anything. Kelly will monitor all your interactions with CPS, documenting every violation of procedure. How do I trust that any of this will work? Harrison showed me one final file. Emma Walsh, his daughter. School photos, medical records, and a death certificate that told a different story than the one he'd shared earlier. Emma wasn't killed by a random drunk driver. She was murdered by Judge Brennan's nephew after she witnessed him dealing drugs near her school. The family court system covered it up just like they're trying to cover up Marcus's crimes. The truth hit me like ice water. This is personal for you. Emma would be alive today if I'd understood how deep this corruption runs. I won't let another child suffer because I failed to act when I had the chance. What if they come after us? What if they try to silence us? They're going to try. Foster has powerful allies who profit from keeping families separated, but we have something they don't expect. What's that? The truth, and enough evidence to destroy their entire operation. Later that evening, after the hospital had settled into its quiet night rhythm, Harrison invited me to his private study adjacent to the executive offices. The room felt like a war room with multiple computer screens, filing cabinets secured with electronic locks, and walls covered with organizational charts connecting dozens of names and photographs. This is where I've spent the last 3 years, Harrison said, gesturing toward the complex web of evidence surrounding us. Building the case that will bring down the largest child trafficking network in the state. At the center of the wall display was Emma's photograph, surrounded by documentation of her death investigation and the subsequent cover-up that protected her killer. Judge Brennan's nephew, Danny, was dealing cocaine to middle school students near Emma's school. She saw him threatening a younger boy, trying to force the kid to carry drugs. Emma intervened, threatened to tell school authorities. Harrison pulled up police reports that had been buried and witness statements that had been suppressed. Danny pushed her in front of a delivery truck to silence her, made it look like an accident. But you found the truth. I hired Kelly Santos to investigate after the police closed the case with suspicious speed. She discovered Danny had 3 witnesses to his crime, all of whom were pressured by police to change their stories. What happened to the witnesses? 2 families moved out of state after receiving anonymous threats. The 3rd witness, a 12-year-old named Tommy Chen, was removed from his family by Diana Foster on fabricated abuse allegations. The systematic destruction of evidence and witnesses revealed the scope of corruption protecting Judge Brennan's family. Tommy Chen was placed with a family in Oregon through one of the private adoption agencies. His parents fought the placement for 18 months before running out of money for legal fees. Do you know where Tommy is now? Kelly tracks all the displaced children. Tommy's adoptive family believes his birth parents were drug addicts who abandoned him. They have no idea he was stolen from a loving family to prevent him from testifying about a murder. Harrison showed me files on other children whose removals coincided with their family's involvement in cases that threatened Judge Brennan's network. Foster doesn't just steal children for profit. She removes potential witnesses, silences families who might expose corruption, and destroys evidence by separating children from parents who could corroborate the truth. How many children are we talking about? 67 confirmed removals over 4 years. At least 20 were taken specifically to prevent testimony in criminal cases involving the Brennan family network. The scope of the conspiracy felt overwhelming. How has this gone on so long without anyone noticing? Who's going to listen to parents accused of child abuse? Who believes mothers who claim CPS stole their children? The system is designed to silence victims by discrediting them before they can speak. Harrison pulled up communications intercepts showing coordination between Diana Foster, Judge Brennan, and 3 private adoption agencies. They've perfected the process. Foster identifies vulnerable families, manufactures evidence of abuse or neglect, and Brennan ensures the children are never returned. The adoption agencies place them with wealthy families who pay premium prices. What's the total profit from this operation? Conservative estimate $12 million over 4 years. Each child generates between $100,000 and $200,000 in adoption fees, plus ongoing payments to the network operators. And Sophie is just the latest victim. Sophie represents something different. Marcus's drug connections tie back to the same network that killed Emma. Foster made a mistake targeting your family because it connects her operation to a murder case. Harrison showed me surveillance footage of Marcus meeting with Danny Brennan at the same location where Emma had been killed. Marcus was dealing for Danny Brennan, which makes Sophie a potential witness to their drug operation. Foster can't just steal her for profit. She has to eliminate her as a threat to the entire network. They're planning to kill Sophie. They're planning to make her disappear permanently, placed with a family in another state, new identity, no contact with anyone from her past. Sophie would grow up never knowing who she really is. The calculated cruelty of the plan staggered me. How do we stop them? We spring the trap they don't know they're walking into. Kelly has been feeding information to federal investigators for months, building a case for racketeering and conspiracy charges. Federal investigators, FBI Public Corruption Unit, specifically Agent Sarah Coleman. She's been building cases against judicial corruption networks nationwide. Sophie's situation gives her the evidence needed for arrests. Harrison's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. He read it quickly, his expression shifting from determination to urgent concern. Kelly's surveillance team reports unusual activity around Sophie's ICU. 3 men in suits who aren't hospital staff asking questions about her condition and discharge timeline. Foster's people, unknown, but they're not here for medical reasons. We need to increase security around Sophie immediately. Harrison made several rapid phone calls coordinating additional protection through hospital security and private contractors. Within minutes, the pediatric ICU had discreet but comprehensive surveillance monitoring every entrance and exit. Freddie, from this point forward, you're in danger too. They can't risk you exposing their operation any more than they can risk Sophie's testimony. What kind of danger? Foster has made people disappear before. Families who got too close to the truth investigators who asked too many questions. They have resources and connections that extend beyond the court system. Are you saying they'll try to kill us? I'm saying they'll do whatever it takes to protect a $12 million operation. Your life and Sophie's life are acceptable losses to preserve their network. Harrison opened a secure communication device connecting us directly to Kelly Santos and Agent Coleman. It's time to accelerate our timeline. Foster's moving faster than we anticipated, which means they know more about our investigation than we realized. How is that possible? I asked. Someone in the federal investigation has been feeding information to Judge Brennan. We have a leak, and it's compromising our ability to protect Sophie and build our case. The revelation that even federal investigators couldn't be completely trusted left me feeling utterly vulnerable. Who can we trust? Each other, Harrison said simply, and the evidence we've gathered. The truth doesn't need allies to be true. The next morning brought Kelly Santos to the hospital, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s whose professional demeanor couldn't quite hide the intensity burning beneath her surface. She carried herself like someone accustomed to dangerous work alert and purposeful in every movement. Marcus Rodriguez is more connected than we initially realized. Kelly began without preamble spreading files across Harrison's conference table. His full name is Marcus Daniel Rodriguez Brennan. Judge William Brennan is his mother's older brother. The family connection explained everything. So Marcus wasn't just a random drug dealer, he was part of the network. Marcus was placed in Sophie's life deliberately. Judge Brennan identified you as a potential threat 2 years ago when you testified as a character witness in a custody case involving one of Foster's victims. I struggled to remember the case. Jessica Torres. Her son Miguel was removed after she questioned irregular charges on her medical bills. Jessica's ex-husband was laundering money for the adoption agencies through fraudulent medical billing. Your testimony supported Jessica's credibility and nearly exposed the financial fraud. So they targeted me for revenge. They targeted you for elimination. Marcus was supposed to compromise your parenting, create evidence of neglect, and set up Sophie's removal through the standard Foster playbook. Kelly showed me surveillance photos of Marcus meeting with Judge Brennan at his private club, receiving envelopes of cash and specific instructions about his relationship with me. Marcus was paid $15,000 to document your alleged unfitness as a mother. The drug dealing was secondary income, but the primary mission was destroying your credibility. The accident wasn't part of their plan. Marcus got careless, started using the drugs he was supposed to sell, and crashed while high. Sophie's injuries were unintended consequences, but Foster adapted quickly to use the situation. Harrison studied financial records showing payments from Judge Brennan's accounts to Marcus over 18 months. They've been planning Sophie's removal since she was 5 years old. Why so much effort for one child? Kelly pulled up additional files showing the broader scope of the operation. You weren't the only target. Foster has been systematically removing children from families connected to potential whistleblowers, witnesses, and investigators. The organizational chart showed connections between 43 families, all linked by their proximity to cases that threatened the network's operations. It's preventive elimination. Remove the children, destroy the families, and no one has the emotional strength or financial resources to pursue investigations. How successful has this strategy been? Completely successful until now. Families facing child removal don't have energy to investigate corruption. They spend everything trying to get their children back and eventually give up in despair. Harrison pointed to a section of the chart showing financial flows between the adoption agencies and offshore accounts. The money trail leads to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. This operation funds international criminal activities. What kind of activities? Human trafficking networks in Eastern Europe, drug cartels in South America, weapons dealers in Africa. The adoption fees from American children fund global criminal enterprises. The scope of evil connected to Sophie's case felt incomprehensible. How do we fight something this big? We don't fight the whole network, Kelly explained. We cut off its head by exposing Judge Brennan and Diana Foster. Without their protection, the entire American operation collapses. What evidence do we have that's strong enough? Kelly opened a laptop showing bank records, recorded conversations, and surveillance footage documenting the conspiracy. 18 months of documented coordination between Brennan Foster and the adoption agencies, financial transfers, child placement schedules, and profit-sharing agreements. Is it enough for arrests? It's enough to destroy their careers and trigger federal racketeering charges. But we need to act before they realize how much evidence we've gathered. Harrison's phone rang with an urgent call from hospital security. 3 additional men in suits had arrived at the hospital claiming to be federal marshals with authority to place Sophie in protective custody. They're accelerating their timeline, Kelly said grimly. Foster must know we're building a case. How could she know? The leak in the federal investigation. Someone warned them that arrests are imminent, so they're moving to secure Sophie before we can act. Harrison immediately activated hospital lockdown protocols, restricting access to the pediatric ICU and requiring additional identification for all visitors. Kelly, how quickly can Agent Coleman move on the arrests? She needs 6 more hours to coordinate with federal prosecutors and ensure all the evidence is legally admissible. But Sophie might not have 6 hours. Then we force their hand, make them reveal themselves publicly so they can't operate in shadows anymore. Harrison began making calls to media contacts while Kelly coordinated with federal agents positioned around the hospital. The plan was risky, but necessary to expose the corruption publicly while protecting Sophie from immediate removal. Freddie, you're about to become the center of a media storm. Are you prepared for that level of attention? The question terrified me, but Sophie's life depended on my courage. Whatever it takes to keep her safe. The next few hours will determine whether we save Sophie and 43 other children or whether the network succeeds in covering up their crimes permanently. Kelly's secure phone buzzed with an urgent message from her surveillance team. Marcus Rodriguez has been released from jail on emergency bond. Judge Brennan signed the order 20 minutes ago. How is that possible? He was charged with multiple felonies. Judicial corruption. Brennan can override normal procedures when it serves the network's interests. Where is Marcus now? Unknown. He disappeared immediately after release. Could be heading to the hospital, could be fleeing the country. Harrison increased security around Sophie's room while Kelly coordinated with federal agents to track Marcus's location. The situation was deteriorating rapidly with too many variables beyond our control. If Marcus reaches Sophie, he could finish what the accident started, Kelly warned. He knows this entire operation is compromised and he has nothing left to lose. What do you mean? Dead children can't testify. If Marcus kills Sophie and makes it look like complications from her injuries, Foster's case becomes much simpler. The cold calculation behind their strategy shocked me, even though I should have expected it by now. How do we protect her? We end this tonight. Agent Coleman is moving up the arrest timeline. Federal agents will take Judge Brennan and Diana Foster into custody within 2 hours. What about Marcus? Priority 1 is securing the evidence and key witnesses. Marcus will be found, but protecting Sophie takes precedence over capturing him. Harrison closed his laptop with finality. It's time. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few hours." At 4:37 in the afternoon, Sophie's eyes fluttered open for the first time since the accident. I was holding her hand when her fingers tightened around mine and her soft brown eyes found my face with confused recognition. "Mommy." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed hours earlier. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm right here." "Where am I? Why does everything hurt?" The heart-wrenching confusion in her voice broke something inside me, but I forced my tone to remain calm and reassuring. "You're in the hospital, sweetheart. You were in a car accident, but you're going to be okay." "Was Daddy with me?" The innocent question carried devastating implications. Sophie's memory of the accident could provide the evidence needed to expose Marcus's crimes and the broader conspiracy. "Do you remember what happened with Daddy?" Dr. Torres entered quietly, followed by Dr. Ruth Chen, a pediatric psychologist Harrison had brought in specifically to document Sophie's testimony with proper legal protocols. "Sophie, these are doctors who've been helping you get better. They need to ask you some questions about what you remember." "Okay." Sophie nodded tentatively, still clinging to my hand with the desperate grip of a frightened child. Dr. Chen settled into the chair beside Sophie's bed with gentle professionalism. "Hi, Sophie. I'm Dr. Chen. I help children who've been in accidents. Can you tell me about the last thing you remember before waking up here?" "Daddy picked me up from Mommy's house. He said we were going to the arcade, but then we went somewhere else instead." "Where did you go instead?" Sophie's expression darkened with remembered fear. "A scary place with broken windows and mean-looking people. Daddy told me to stay in the car and hide some packages for him." "What kind of packages?" "Little plastic bags. Daddy said they were special medicine, but they look like the bad stuff from television shows about police." Dr. Chen documented everything while Kelly Santos monitored from the observation window, ensuring Sophie's testimony would be legally admissible. "Did Daddy ask you to do anything else with the packages?" "He said I had to keep them in my school backpack and give them to people who said the secret word. But I was scared because the packages smelled funny and made my hands feel weird." "What was the secret word?" "Emma. People were supposed to say Emma sent me, and then I was supposed to give them a package." The revelation hit me like ice water. They'd used Harrison's dead daughter's name as a code word, turning Emma's memory into part of their criminal operation. "Sophie, did Daddy ever tell you not to tell Mommy about the packages?" "Every time. He said bad men would hurt Mommy if I told anyone about our special games. He said they would take me away from Mommy forever if I didn't keep the secret." "Were you scared?" Tears began flowing down Sophie's cheeks as the traumatic memories surfaced. "I was so scared, Mommy. I didn't want the bad men to hurt you, but I didn't want to help Daddy with the scary stuff either." I smoothed Sophie's hair while my own tears fell freely. "You were so brave, baby girl. You did nothing wrong." "Did the bad men hurt you? Are they going to take me away?" "No one is going to take you away from me, I promise." Dr. Chen continued her gentle questioning, documenting Marcus's systematic use of Sophie as a drug courier and the psychological manipulation he'd employed to ensure her silence. "Sophie, on the day of the accident, did Daddy seem different than usual?" "He was acting really weird. His eyes looked funny and he kept talking really fast about money and getting away from bad people. He kept checking his phone and getting mad at the people on the other side." "Do you remember anything about the car accident itself?" Sophie's face contorted with pain as traumatic memories surfaced. "Daddy was driving really fast and swerving a lot. He was yelling at someone on the phone about packages and money. I kept asking him to slow down, but he wouldn't listen." "What happened next?" "Everything went spinning and there was a loud crash and glass everywhere. I was hanging upside down and couldn't move. Daddy was making weird noises, but then it got quiet." "Did Daddy try to help you after the accident?" "I called for him, but he didn't answer. Then I heard his door open and close and footsteps walking away. I kept calling for Mommy, but no one came for a really long time." The image of Marcus abandoning Sophie trapped and injured in the wreckage filled me with rage so pure it felt like burning acid in my chest. Sophie, you've been so brave telling us about this. Is there anything else you remember that felt scary or wrong? Daddy's friends were always scary. They had guns and talked about hurting people who didn't do what they wanted. One man said kids were good for business because police don't suspect children. Kelly Santos had recorded everything, and Dr. Chen's documentation would provide unshakable testimony about Marcus's crimes and Sophie's victimization. "Sweetheart, you're safe now," I told Sophie, kissing her forehead gently. "The bad men can't hurt us anymore." "Are you sure Mommy Daddy said they were everywhere and could find us anywhere?" "I'm sure, baby girl. There are good people protecting us now." Harrison entered quietly, and Sophie studied his face with the intuitive wariness children develop after trauma. "Sophie, this is Mr. Walsh. He's been helping to keep you safe while you were sleeping." "Are you a policeman?" "I'm someone who lost his daughter to bad people like your daddy's friends. I want to make sure no other children get hurt the way you did." Sophie considered this seriously before reaching out her small hand to Harrison. "I'm sorry about your little girl." Harrison accepted her hand with visible emotion. "Thank you, Sophie. She would have liked you very much." "What was her name?" "Emma. Her name was Emma." Sophie's eyes widened with recognition. "That was the secret word Daddy made me learn. Emma sent me." "I know, sweetheart. The bad people used Emma's name for their crimes, but now we're going to stop them from hurting anyone else." Sophie's testimony had provided the final pieces of evidence needed to destroy the entire network. Her courage in sharing her traumatic experiences would save not only herself, but dozens of other children trapped in the system. Dr. Torres checked Sophie's vital signs and confirmed she was strong enough for brief interviews with federal agents. The next phase of our battle was about to begin. While Sophie rested after her emotional testimony, Kelly Santos requested an urgent meeting in Harrison's secure conference room. Her expression carried the grim satisfaction of an investigator who'd uncovered the final piece of a complex puzzle. "The financial investigation has revealed something that changes everything about your family's involvement." Kelly began spreading bank records and transaction histories across the table. "What do you mean?" "Your mother Patricia didn't abandon you out of cruelty. She abandoned you for profit." Kelly showed me deposit records for Patricia's checking account, 6 payments of $5,000 each over the past 8 months, all from an account registered to the Brennan Family Foundation for Child Welfare. "Patricia has been receiving payments to help remove Sophie from your custody." The betrayal cut deeper than anything Marcus had done. "My own mother sold my daughter." "The payments began 2 weeks after you testified in Jessica Torres's custody case. Patricia was recruited specifically to monitor your activities and create documentation of your alleged unfitness as a parent." Harrison studied the transaction dates with growing anger. Every family crisis, every call for help, every moment of vulnerability was being reported to Foster's operation. "Patricia documented your financial struggles, relationship problems, and parenting challenges. She provided Foster with the foundation for building a neglect case against you." Kelly pulled up recorded phone conversations between Patricia and Diana Foster, strategizing about how to position Sophie's removal as necessary for child safety. "Your mother wasn't just cooperating with the investigation. She was actively working to ensure it succeeded." "But why would she destroy her own family for money?" "Gambling debts. Patricia owes $60,000 to a casino in Atlantic City. The Brennan Network offered to clear her debt in exchange for delivering Sophie." The revelation recontextualized every cruel interaction with my family. Patricia's coldness hadn't been disappointment in my choices. It had been calculated manipulation designed to isolate me and justify Sophie's removal. "What about Janet?" "Janet was promised $15,000 for supporting Patricia's testimony against you. She's been documenting everything you've shared with her for months, building a case file of your alleged instability." Kelly showed me copies of emails Janet had sent to Foster, detailing conversations about my financial stress worries about Marcus and moments of parental exhaustion that had been reframed as evidence of neglect. Your entire family was working against you from the beginning. How long has this been planned? 18 months. The operation identified you as a target after your testimony threatened their money laundering scheme. They needed you discredited and Sophie removed to eliminate potential future problems. Harrison pulled up organizational charts showing how Patricia and Janet fit into the broader conspiracy. They weren't just paid informants, they were active participants in a criminal enterprise. What's the full scope of their involvement? Patricia helped Foster identify other vulnerable single mothers in your social circle. She provided information about Jessica Torres Maria Santos and Jennifer Wright, all of whom subsequently lost their children. The systematic nature of the betrayal staggered me. She used me to hurt other families too. Patricia became Foster's most valuable asset because she had credibility as a concerned grandmother. Judges trusted her testimony more than professional witnesses. Kelly showed me court transcripts where Patricia had testified against 3 other mothers using nearly identical language about parental unfitness and child safety concerns. She's been perfecting her testimony for months, rehearsing the most effective ways to destroy parental rights. Is there evidence of coordination between Patricia and the other network operators? Weekly meetings at Judge Brennan's private club, always paid in cash, always scheduled around active custody cases. Patricia received detailed coaching about how to present evidence and respond to cross-examination. Harrison's secure phone buzzed with an urgent message from federal agents positioned around the hospital. Marcus Rodriguez has been spotted in the hospital parking garage. He's not alone. Kelly immediately activated enhanced security protocols while Harrison coordinated with FBI agents preparing to make arrests. How many people with Marcus? Unknown, but they're armed and moving toward the main hospital entrance. Federal agents are moving to intercept, but Marcus knows the hospital layout from previous visits. He's coming for Sophie. Marcus knows the entire operation is compromised. If he can't escape, he's going to try eliminating the primary witness against him. Harrison made rapid calls to hospital security while Kelly coordinated with federal tactical teams. The final confrontation was beginning whether we were ready or not. Freddie, you need to stay with Sophie. Don't leave her room for any reason until federal agents give you all clear confirmation. What if Marcus gets past security? He won't, Harrison said with grim determination. This ends tonight. Kelly's surveillance equipment showed multiple unmarked vehicles surrounding the hospital as federal agents took positions to intercept Marcus and his associates. Patricia and Janet are also being arrested at this moment. FBI agents are executing search warrants on their homes and financial records. They'll find evidence of the full conspiracy. Everything. Communications with Foster payments from the Brennan Foundation and documentation of their surveillance activities against you and other targeted families. Harrison's expression shifted from concern to satisfaction as reports came in from federal agents. Judge Brennan has been taken into custody at his private club. Diana Foster is being arrested at her office. The coordinated arrests are happening now. What about the adoption agencies? Simultaneous raids on all 3 companies. Federal agents are securing financial records and client files that will document the entire trafficking operation. Kelly monitored multiple communication channels as the law enforcement operation unfolded. 47 arrests in progress across 5 states. This is the largest child trafficking bust in federal history. And Sophie is safe. Her testimony provided the evidence that made all of this possible. As if responding to her name, Sophie stirred in her hospital bed, waking gradually from her afternoon rest. She looked around the room with increasing alertness, taking in the increased security presence and tense atmosphere. Mommy, are the bad men coming? No, baby girl. The good guys are catching all the bad men right now. We're safe. Does that mean I can come home with you? For the first time in days, I could answer that question with complete certainty. Yes, sweetheart. We're going home together, and no one is ever going to separate us again. The systematic destruction of the corruption network meant Sophie would never again be targeted for removal, and 43 other children would finally have the chance to return to their real families. The following morning brought news that should have felt like victory, but Kelly Santos's grim expression warned us that our troubles were far from over. She arrived at the hospital with FBI agent Sarah Coleman, a sharp-featured woman whose professional composure couldn't quite mask the urgency driving her investigation. Marcus Rodriguez escaped from federal custody during transport to arraignment, Agent Coleman announced without preamble. The prison transport van was ambushed on Highway 26 at approximately 11:45 last night. My blood turned to ice. How is that possible? Coordinated effort involving corrupt corrections officers and outside operatives. The van was stopped under false pretenses, guards were overpowered, and Marcus was extracted along with 2 other high-value prisoners. Harrison leaned forward with focused intensity. Do we know who orchestrated the escape? Electronic surveillance indicates coordination from inside the federal courthouse. Someone with high-level access provided detailed information about transport routes and security protocols. Kelly spread photographs across the conference table showing the aftermath of the ambush. 3 corrections officers were found unconscious but unharmed. Professional operation designed to extract specific prisoners without creating additional federal charges. Who else was taken? Danny Brennan and Vincent Torres both connected to the adoption trafficking network. All 3 escapees represent critical witnesses whose testimony could expose additional layers of the conspiracy. Agent Coleman pulled up surveillance footage from traffic cameras along the escape route. The extraction team used military-grade coordination and equipment. This wasn't amateur criminal activity. Are you saying the network has military connections? The adoption trafficking operation generates enough revenue to fund sophisticated security and extraction capabilities. We're dealing with organized crime at the highest levels. Harrison studied the tactical analysis of the escape with growing concern. What's the threat level to Sophie and other witnesses? Maximum threat. Marcus knows he faces life imprisonment if recaptured. Eliminating key witnesses is his only remaining option for avoiding conviction. Kelly activated additional security monitoring around Sophie's hospital room, while Agent Coleman coordinated with federal marshals to provide witness protection. How long before Marcus and his associates are recaptured? Unknown. They had a 6-hour head start and sophisticated support network. Could be days, could be weeks. What about the broader investigation? Can you proceed without Marcus's testimony? Agent Coleman opened files documenting the scope of evidence gathered during the coordinated arrests. We have sufficient evidence to prosecute the entire network even without Marcus. His escape actually strengthens our case by demonstrating the conspiracy's reach into federal law enforcement. What do you mean? Marcus couldn't have escaped without inside information about transport security. His extraction proves corruption extends into federal agencies, which triggers additional racketeering charges. Kelly showed us intercepted communications between the escape coordinators and unknown federal contacts. Someone with access to classified law enforcement information provided detailed intelligence about witness protection protocols. How deep does this corruption go? We're investigating connections between the trafficking network and federal officials in 3 agencies. The revenue from selling children funds broader criminal operations that compromise law enforcement at multiple levels. Harrison's expression darkened as he studied the evidence of federal corruption. Emma's death investigation was also compromised by federal interference. This conspiracy has been protecting itself for years. Agent Coleman nodded grimly. Judge Brennan's network has been systematically compromising investigations that threaten their operations. Your daughter's case was buried by federal agents who received payments from the trafficking proceeds. How many other murders have been covered up? We're reviewing 17 suspicious deaths connected to families who challenged child removal proceedings. Most were ruled accidents or suicides, but the pattern suggests systematic elimination of threats. Kelly pulled up a map showing locations of suspicious deaths across 4 states, all connected to cases involving Diana Foster's child removals. Parents who fought too hard, lawyers who asked too many questions, social workers who refused to falsify reports. Anyone who posed a threat to the operation faced elimination. Are Sophie and I still targets for assassination? Priority targets. Sophie's testimony exposed the entire network and your visibility as her mother makes you a symbol of resistance to their operations. Agent Coleman explained the witness protection options available to us, but each scenario involves separating Sophie from her normal life and identity. How long would we need to remain in hiding? Until Marcus and his associates are recaptured and the broader network is completely dismantled. Could be months or years. The prospect of living in constant fear and isolation felt almost as devastating as the original threat of losing Sophie to the foster system. What if we refuse witness protection? You'd be gambling with Sophie's life against professional assassins with unlimited resources and federal connections. Harrison had been quietly making phone calls during our conversation with federal agents. He closed his secure phone with the expression of someone who'd made a difficult decision. There's another option. My private security team has been tracking Marcus since his escape. We know where he's hiding, and we can force a final confrontation on our terms. That's vigilante justice, Agent Coleman warned. Any evidence gathered through private action would be inadmissible in federal court. I'm not interested in additional evidence. I'm interested in ending the threat to Sophie permanently. Kelly opened her laptop showing real-time surveillance footage of a warehouse complex outside the city limits. Marcus and his associates are using the facility as a staging area for their escape from the country. How do you know? Electronic surveillance of their communications thermal imaging of the building showing multiple occupants and financial tracking of payments to the warehouse owner. Harrison pointed to tactical positions around the warehouse complex. Federal agents can't act on private surveillance, but they can respond to reports of criminal activity in progress. What kind of criminal activity? The warehouse complex is being used to prepare 43 kidnapped children for international trafficking. Marcus's escape was just the first phase of a plan to liquidate all evidence of the adoption network. Agent Coleman's expression shifted from disapproval to urgent interest. You're saying the children are being held at that location? Kelly's team identified the facility through financial analysis of the trafficking network's operations. The children removed by Foster's fake investigations are being prepared for overseas sale. That changes everything. If children are in immediate danger, we have authorization for emergency action. Kelly showed thermal imaging indicating the presence of multiple small individuals in the warehouse building, consistent with children being held against their will. The international buyers are arriving tonight to complete the transactions. After that, the children disappear forever into overseas trafficking networks. How confident are you about this intelligence? Confident enough to risk Sophie's safety on it, Harrison said with finality. We end this tonight, or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Agent Coleman began coordinating with federal tactical teams while Kelly prepared surveillance equipment to monitor the rescue operation. Freddie, this is your choice. We can put you and Sophie in witness protection, or we can finish this fight tonight. Looking at Sophie sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed, trusting me to keep her safe, I knew there was really only one choice. We finish it tonight. While federal agents prepared for the warehouse operation, an emergency custody hearing was scheduled to address Sophie's placement now that Diana Foster and Judge Brennan had been arrested. The hearing would determine whether Sophie could remain with me or be placed in temporary state custody pending resolution of the criminal cases. The new judge assigned to our case was the Honorable Margaret Santos, a family court veteran with a reputation for prioritizing children's welfare over bureaucratic convenience. She had agreed to hear our case on emergency basis given the extraordinary circumstances. Harrison had arranged for Sarah Coleman, one of the state's top family law attorneys, to represent us in the hearing. Sarah arrived at the courthouse with comprehensive documentation of the conspiracy that had targeted our family. Judge Santos has been briefed on the federal investigation, Sarah explained as we prepared for the hearing. She understands that normal custody procedures were compromised by criminal corruption. What do we need to prove? That Sophie's removal was based on fabricated evidence and that you're a fit parent who was targeted by a criminal conspiracy. The federal arrests provide strong support for our position. Patricia and Janet were brought to the courthouse in federal custody to testify about their involvement in the conspiracy. Seeing them in orange jumpsuits and shackles felt surreal after years of accepting their judgment about my worthiness as a mother. Judge Santos called the hearing to order with an atmosphere of gravity befitting the circumstances. This case involves allegations of systematic corruption in child protective services and conspiracy to remove children from fit parents for criminal purposes. Diana Foster's replacement, a social worker named Michael Chen, presented the state's position with obvious discomfort. Your Honor, given the irregularities, in this case, the state withdraws its petition for removal and recommends that Sophie remain with her mother. On what basis does the state withdraw its petition? Evidence gathered by federal investigators demonstrates that the original removal recommendation was based on fabricated evidence and false testimony. The state cannot support a case built on criminal conspiracy. Sarah Coleman presented our evidence systematically documenting each aspect of the conspiracy that had targeted our family. Bank records showing payments to Patricia, surveillance footage of Marcus planting evidence, and recorded conversations between Foster and Judge Brennan. Your Honor, this family was systematically destroyed by a criminal enterprise that used child protective services as a weapon against innocent parents. Sophie Martinez belongs with her mother, who has been the victim of unprecedented corruption. Judge Santos reviewed the evidence with visible anger at the violations of justice represented by the conspiracy. Mrs. Martinez, please tell the court about your relationship with your daughter. Sophie is my world, Your Honor. Everything I've done since she was born has been focused on giving her the best life possible. I work 2 jobs to provide for her. I've never used drugs or alcohol, and I've never put her in danger intentionally. What about the allegations made by your family members? Patricia was brought forward to testify her orange jumpsuit and shackles, providing stark contrast to her previous appearance of respectability. Mrs. Phillips, you previously testified that your daughter was an unfit mother. Do you maintain that position? Patricia's composure cracked under the weight of her exposed crimes. I was paid to say those things. None of it was true. Paid by whom? Diana Foster and Judge Brennan. They gave me money to spy on Freddie and testify against her. I needed the money because of gambling debts. So your testimony about your daughter's fitness as a parent was false? Completely false. Freddie is a wonderful mother. Sophie adores her. I destroyed my own family for money. Patricia broke down, completely sobbing as she confessed to selling her granddaughter for gambling money. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as she detailed the systematic betrayal of her own family. Janet's testimony followed similar patterns, admitting to fabricating evidence and documenting private conversations to build a false case of parental neglect. Your Honor. Sarah Coleman concluded, this family has been the victim of the most elaborate conspiracy in family court history. Sophie Martinez has never been in danger from her mother. The only danger came from criminals who infiltrated the child protection system. Dr. Torres was called to testify about Sophie's medical condition and my devotion to her care throughout her hospitalization. Mrs. Martinez has not left her daughter's side since the accident. She has participated in every medical decision advocated for Sophie's needs and demonstrated exemplary parental care under extreme stress. In your medical opinion, should Sophie remain with her mother? Absolutely. Their bond is extraordinary and separation would cause significant psychological trauma to Sophie. Mrs. Martinez is a devoted, competent parent who has never put Sophie at risk. Kelly Santos presented evidence of the broader conspiracy, documenting how 43 other families had been destroyed by the same network that targeted us. Your Honor, this conspiracy has torn apart dozens of families using the family court system as a weapon. Sophie Martinez represents not just one child's future, but the possibility of justice for all families victimized by this network. Judge Santos reviewed all evidence before delivering her ruling with authority that felt like vindication after months of injustice. This court finds that Sophie Martinez was never in danger from her mother and that all allegations of parental unfitness were fabricated by criminals who corrupted the child protection system. The petition for removal is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, this court awards full custody to Freddie Martinez with no restrictions or supervision requirements. Restraining orders are issued against Patricia Phillips and Janet Phillips, prohibiting contact with the family for a period of 5 years. Finally, this court recommends that all families victimized by this conspiracy be provided immediate reunification opportunities and compensation for damages caused by criminal fraud. The relief felt overwhelming as Judge Santos's words officially confirmed what I'd known all along. Sophie belonged with me, and no one had the right to tear our family apart based on lies and corruption. As we left the courthouse, Sophie walked beside me holding my hand tightly, finally understanding that we were safe and that our family would never again be threatened by the criminals who had tried to destroy us. 3 days after the custody hearing, I felt safe enough to return to some normal routines. Sophie was healing well and eager to leave the hospital, so we spent the afternoon walking around the children's ward visiting other young patients and their families. Harrison's security team maintained discreet surveillance, but the arrests of the conspiracy's leaders had created a sense of safety I hadn't felt in months. At 6:30 in the evening, I walked toward the hospital parking garage to retrieve items from my car before spending another night in Sophie's room. The garage was well lit and appeared empty, except for a few scattered vehicles belonging to night shift staff. I was reaching for my car keys when footsteps echoed behind me on the concrete floor. Before I could turn around, a familiar voice made my blood freeze. "Hello, Freddie. Miss me?" Marcus emerged from behind a concrete pillar holding a gun with steady hands that suggested sobriety and dangerous focus. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, harder, with the desperate edge of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Marcus, how did you get past hospital security?" "Amazing what you can accomplish with the right connections and enough money to buy silence. Turn around slowly and walk toward that blue sedan." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are, because if you don't, my associates upstairs will make sure Sophie doesn't wake up from her afternoon nap. One phone call from me and she stops breathing." The threat to Sophie eliminated any possibility of resistance. I walked toward the sedan with Marcus following close behind, the gun pressed against my back. "Get in the driver's seat. You're going to drive exactly where I tell you, and you're going to help me get out of this mess you created." "I didn't create anything. You put Sophie in danger with your drug dealing." "Sophie was supposed to be my ticket to easy money, not the key witness in a federal conspiracy case. Your testimony ruined everything." Marcus forced me to drive toward the interstate while making phone calls to coordinate his escape plan. His desperation was palpable, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Where are we going?" "Mexican border. I have contacts in Tijuana who can get me new documents and passage to South America. But I need money, and you're going to help me get it." "I don't have any money. You know I work paycheck to paycheck." "Your boyfriend, Harrison Walsh, has plenty of money. He's going to wire $200,000 to my accounts in exchange for your safe return." "Harrison isn't my boyfriend. He's just helping us because of his daughter." "Right. Rich men always spend millions of dollars helping random single mothers out of pure charity. Wake up, Freddie. He wants something from you." Marcus's cynicism revealed his inability to understand genuine compassion or selfless action. In his world, every relationship was transactional. Every kindness had a hidden price. Even if Harrison wanted to pay ransom, the FBI would never allow it. You're a federal fugitive. The FBI doesn't know about this little road trip. My inside contacts made sure of that. What inside contacts? You really think Judge Brennan and Diana Foster were the only corrupt officials in this operation? The network has people everywhere. FBI Marshal Service, even federal prosecutors. The revelation that federal corruption extended beyond the local conspiracy felt like another betrayal of the justice system I'd trusted to protect us. Marcus, you can't run forever. Eventually they'll find you. Maybe, but I'll be living on a beach in Brazil instead of dying in federal prison. All I need is enough money to disappear permanently. My car phone buzzed with an incoming call from Harrison. Marcus gestured for me to answer it, holding the gun where I could see it clearly. Freddie, where are you? Sophie is asking for you and security can't locate you in the hospital. I'm with Marcus, I said carefully, hoping Harrison would understand the implications immediately. Are you safe? For now. He wants to discuss financial arrangements for my return. Put him on the phone. Marcus grabbed the phone with aggressive confidence. Walsh, you're going to transfer $200,000 to an account I'll specify. You have 2 hours or Freddie disappears permanently. Marcus, you're making this situation worse for yourself. Kidnapping charges will add 20 years to your sentence. I'm already facing life imprisonment. What's another 20 years? But you have a choice, pay the money or explain to Sophie why her mother never came home. How do I know Freddie will be released safely? You don't. But you know what happens if you don't pay. 2 hours, Walsh. Don't involve the FBI, don't try to track us, just transfer the money. Marcus ended the call and continued driving toward the border, growing more agitated as traffic slowed our progress. His escape plan depended on reaching Mexico before federal agents could coordinate with border security. Freddie, you need to understand something. This isn't personal. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Putting Sophie in danger was personal. Using her as a drug mule was personal. Sophie was never supposed to be hurt. The accident was bad luck, not intentional harm. You abandoned her trapped in that car. You left my daughter bleeding and unconscious while you saved yourself. I panicked. I wasn't thinking clearly because of the drugs, but I never wanted Sophie to be seriously injured. You wanted to sell her to child traffickers. Marcus's expression shifted from defensive to coldly calculating. Sophie was worth more as an adopted child than as my drug courier. The network offered $300,000 for a healthy 7-year-old girl with no family complications. I'm her family. Not after Foster finished destroying your credibility. You would have been declared unfit. Sophie would have been removed, and she would have been sold to wealthy buyers who think they're rescuing an abused child. And you would have collected money for selling your own daughter. $300,000 split between me and Judge Brennan, enough to set me up in business without needing street-level drug sales. The casual way Marcus discussed selling Sophie revealed the absolute corruption of his moral compass. In his mind, our daughter was simply merchandise to be traded for personal profit. Marcus, it's not too late to end this differently. Surrender to federal agents and testify against the network. You could get a reduced sentence. Reduced to what, 40 years instead of life? I'd rather take my chances in Brazil. What about Sophie? Don't you care what happens to her? What? Sophie will be fine with her rich new family. Better than fine. She'll have everything money can buy. She'll have everything except her real family. Family is overrated, Freddie. Money is what matters in this world. Everything else is sentiment. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message that made his expression shift from confidence to worry. He read the text twice before cursing loudly. What's wrong? Border security has been alerted to watch for my vehicle. Someone tipped them off despite my instructions to Walsh. Maybe Harrison called the FBI. Or maybe my federal contacts aren't as reliable as I thought. Either way, crossing at official border points is no longer an option. Marcus pulled off the highway into a remote truck stop, scanning the area for alternative transportation or escape routes. His desperation was increasing as his options disappeared. "Freddie, you're going to call Walsh again. Tell him to arrange private transportation across the border. He has enough money to buy silence from border guards." "Harrison won't help you escape justice." "Harrison will do whatever it takes to keep you alive. Rich men always protect their investments." Marcus forced me to place the call to Harrison from a payphone at the truck stop, standing close enough that I could feel his nervous energy and growing desperation. The gun remained visible in his jacket pocket, a constant reminder of how quickly this situation could turn deadly. "Harrison, he wants you to arrange private transport across the Mexican border. He says you have contacts who can buy silence from border guards." "Freddie, stay calm and listen carefully. Federal agents have been tracking your location through your phone's GPS. Marcus doesn't know it, but this truck stop is already surrounded." I kept my expression neutral while processing this information. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep Marcus talking for 5 more minutes. Agents are moving into position, but they need clear lines of sight before they can act safely." "I understand. Marcus wants to know your timeline for arranging transport." "Tell him I need 30 minutes to contact my people in Mexico. That should give agents time to get into optimal positions." Marcus grabbed the phone impatiently. "Walsh, what's the delay? I need transport arranged now, not in 30 minutes. Marcus, moving people across international borders requires coordination with multiple contacts. 30 minutes is remarkably fast for this type of arrangement. "You have 20 minutes or Freddie pays the price for delays." Harrison's voice remained steady despite the escalating threat. "Marcus, you're surrounded by federal agents. This can end peacefully if you surrender now." Marcus spun around, scanning the truck stop parking area with panicked intensity. "You son of a bitch! You called the FBI." "I called them the moment you took Freddie, but they're not here to hurt you. Surrender quietly and you'll live to see trial." "I'm not going to federal prison. I'll die first." Marcus grabbed my arm, using me as a human shield while backing toward an abandoned building behind the truck stop. Federal agents emerged from concealment positions around the parking area, weapons drawn but held low to avoid escalating the situation. "Marcus Rodriguez, this is Special Agent Coleman. Release Ms. Martinez and surrender peacefully. You're surrounded with no escape routes." "Stay back or I'll kill her right here." "That won't solve your problems, Marcus. Murdering a federal witness only guarantees life imprisonment or the death penalty. I'm already facing life imprisonment. What difference does it make?" Agent Coleman moved closer with careful precision, her voice carrying the authority of someone trained in hostage negotiation. "The difference is Sophie. If you kill her mother, Sophie grows up knowing her father is a murderer. Is that the legacy you want? Sophie will be better off without either of us. The adoption network will place her with a family that can actually provide for her." "The adoption network is finished, Marcus. Judge Brennan Diana Foster and 47 other network operators are in federal custody. There is no adoption network anymore." "You're lying." Agent Coleman signaled to another agent who held up a tablet showing news coverage of the federal raids. "Largest child trafficking bust in federal history. The network you worked for has been completely dismantled." Marcus studied the news footage showing arrests and raids across multiple states. His expression shifted from defiance to devastation as he realized his criminal empire had collapsed completely. "So what happens to the children?" "They're being reunited with their real families. 43 children will go home to parents who never stopped fighting for them." "And Sophie?" "Sophie goes home with her mother where she's always belonged." Marcus looked at me with something that might have been regret. "I really did love her, Freddie. I just love money more." "I know, but it's not too late to do one right thing. Let Sophie grow up knowing her father chose to protect her mother in the end." Harrison appeared at the edge of the standoff, flanked by additional federal agents, but maintaining a respectful distance from the negotiation. "Marcus, I lost my daughter to this network's violence. Don't force Sophie to lose her mother, too." "Your daughter, Emma." Emma Catherine Walsh. She was murdered by Danny Brennan for threatening to expose the drug operation. Sophie's testimony helped us prove Emma's murder and bring her killer to justice. So this was always about revenge for you. It started as revenge, but it became about justice when I met Sophie and Freddie. Your daughter deserves to grow up with her real mother, not as a commodity sold to strangers. Marcus lowered his weapon slightly, the fight seeming to drain out of him as the reality of his situation became undeniable. What kind of sentence am I looking at if I surrender? That depends on your cooperation with ongoing investigations, Agent Coleman replied. Full cooperation could reduce your sentence significantly. What kind of cooperation? Testimony against remaining network associates, information about international buyers, financial records of trafficking operations. Help us save other children, and the court will consider it during sentencing. Marcus released his grip on my arm, stepping back with his hands partially raised in a gesture of surrender. If I cooperate fully, what's the minimum sentence? 15 to 20 years with possibility of parole after 12 years. You could be free while Sophie is still young enough to know her father. And if I don't cooperate, life imprisonment without parole, death penalty if you harm Ms. Martinez. Marcus set his gun on the ground and stepped away from it with his hands fully raised. I surrender, but I want immunity agreements in writing before I testify about anything. Federal agents moved quickly to secure Marcus and ensure my safety. The standoff that had felt like hours had actually lasted only 23 minutes, but the relief of survival felt overwhelming. Agent Coleman approached with genuine concern for my welfare. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention? I'm okay, just shaken up. How did you find us so quickly? Harrison's security team installed GPS tracking in your phone after the first threat to your safety. We've been monitoring your location continuously. Harrison reached me as federal agents finished securing the scene. Are you sure you're not hurt? I'm fine, but I need to get back to Sophie. She must be terrified. Sophie is safe with Dr. Torres and hospital security. She knows you're okay. As we drove back toward the hospital, Agent Coleman briefed us on the broader results of the federal investigation. The trafficking network generated over $47 million in revenue over 6 years. We've seized assets, frozen accounts, and identified buyers in 12 countries. What happens to the money? Victim Compensation Fund. Every family destroyed by this network will receive financial support for therapy, legal fees, and damages. How many total arrests? 137 people across 15 states and 3 countries, the largest organized crime bust in federal history. And the children? All 43 children are being reunited with their biological families. Some have been separated for years, but DNA testing and family interviews have confirmed their identities. The scope of the victory felt almost too large to comprehend. Sophie's courage in sharing her traumatic experience had led to justice for dozens of other families and the destruction of a criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for years. Harrison, why did you really help us the truth this time? Harrison considered his answer carefully as we approached the hospital. Emma would have wanted me to help Sophie. But more than that, you reminded me that fighting for justice means protecting the innocent, not just punishing the guilty. What happens now? Now you and Sophie go home and build a normal life. The network is finished. The threats are eliminated and your family is safe. For the first time since Sophie's accident, the future felt full of possibility instead of danger. 6 months later, Sophie and I had settled into a rhythm of normalcy that felt both precious and slightly surreal after everything we'd survived. Sophie had returned to school with no lasting effects from her injuries, though she continued therapy sessions with Dr. Chen to process the trauma of Marcus's manipulation and the car accident. I had accepted Harrison's offer to direct the Emma's Voice Foundation, using my experience to help other families navigate crises involving child protection services. The work felt meaningful in ways I'd never experienced before, turning our pain into purpose for protecting vulnerable families. On a crisp October morning, I was reviewing case files for 3 families who'd contacted our foundation for help when my assistant knocked on my office door with an expression of excitement. "Freddie, there's someone here to see you. She says it's about gratitude and closure." Jessica Torres entered my office carrying a bouquet of sunflowers and holding the hand of her son, Miguel, now 8 years old and thriving after being reunited with his mother following the network's collapse. "Freddie, I wanted to thank you in person. Miguel and I are finally home together because of your courage." "Jessica, you don't need to thank me. Sophie's testimony helped all of us. But your willingness to fight saved my son and 42 other children. That kind of bravery deserves recognition." Miguel stepped forward with the shy smile of a child who'd learned to be cautious but was rediscovering trust. "Miss Freddie, Mommy says you helped bring me home. Miguel, your mommy never stopped fighting for you. She's the hero in your story." "Can I meet Sophie? Mommy says she's really brave too." Sophie emerged from the Foundation's children's playroom where she'd been helping younger kids whose families were working with our organization. At 8 years old, she'd developed a remarkable ability to comfort other children facing family crises. "Hi, Miguel. Do you want to see the art project I'm working on? It's about families being together." The 2 children bonded immediately over their shared experience of family separation and reunion. Watching them play together, I felt profound gratitude for the normalcy we'd reclaimed. Harrison joined us in the Foundation office carrying an envelope that bore the official seal of the U.S. Department of Justice. "Freddie, this arrived by federal courier this morning. Marcus's sentencing hearing is scheduled for next month." "What's his expected sentence?" 12 years with possibility of parole after 8 years. His cooperation led to additional arrests in South America and Europe, which earned him significant sentence reduction. "How do I feel about that?" "However you feel is valid. He endangered Sophie's life and terrorized your family, but his testimony saved other children from trafficking." I opened the envelope to find a handwritten letter from Marcus, written from federal prison while awaiting sentencing. "Freddie, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just want you to know that testifying against the network was the first unselfish thing I've done in years. Sophie's courage inspired me to finally do something right. I hope she grows up knowing she changed the world for other children. Tell her I'm proud of her, and I'm sorry for everything. Marcus." The letter stirred complex emotions I wasn't prepared to feel. Marcus remained the man who'd endangered Sophie and terrorized our family, but his cooperation had genuinely helped destroy a criminal network and save other children. "What do you want to do with this letter?" "Keep it. Someday Sophie might want to understand her father's full story, including the part where he chose to help other families." Harrison's phone buzzed with a message that made him smile with genuine happiness. "Dr. Torres just called. The Children's Memorial Hospital Board has approved funding for the new pediatric trauma center. It will be named the Emma Catherine Walsh Center for Child Protection." "That's wonderful. Emma would be proud." "The center will provide medical care and legal advocacy for children caught in custody disputes or family court corruption, a permanent safeguard against what happened to our families." Sophie overheard our conversation and approached with the serious expression she wore when processing important information. "Mr. Harrison, will the new center help kids like Miguel who were taken away from their mommies?" "Yes, sweetheart. It will make sure families stay together when they're supposed to be together." "Good. Every kid should get to live with their real mommy and daddy if they're not mean." The wisdom in Sophie's simple statement captured the essence of everything we'd fought for: the fundamental right of children to remain with loving families. Kelly Santos arrived for our monthly foundation meeting carrying files on new cases that required investigation. The demand for our services had grown as word spread about our success in exposing the trafficking network. We've received requests for help from families in 8 states this month. Word is getting out that there's finally an organization willing to fight corrupt child protection services. How many cases can we realistically handle? With current staffing, about 15 active cases at any given time. but Harrison has approved funding for expansion if we can find qualified investigators and attorneys. What kind of cases are we seeing? Mostly variations of what happened to your family. Single mothers targeted by social workers with financial motives, families threatened with child removal for questioning irregularities, and children placed with adoptive families through questionable processes. The pattern confirmed what we'd suspected the network Harrison and Kelly had exposed was just one example of systematic corruption that existed throughout the child protection system. Are we making a difference? Absolutely. 3 families have been reunited with their children this month because of our intervention. 8 others have avoided wrongful removal through our legal advocacy. Sophie had been listening to our conversation with the focused attention she gave to adult topics that affected children's welfare. Mommy, are there still bad people trying to take kids away from their families? Some baby girl. But now there are good people working to stop them. Like us. Like us and like all the families who refuse to give up fighting for their children. Harrison pulled out a newspaper article about congressional hearings inspired by our case. Sophie's law had passed both houses of Congress, requiring independent oversight of all child removal proceedings and mandatory investigation of financial conflicts of interest in adoption cases. Your testimony started a national conversation about protecting families from corruption, Sophie. You changed laws that will protect children for generations. Sophie considered this information with the seriousness of a child who understood her experience had broader implications. Does that mean other kids won't have to be scared of bad social workers anymore? It means there will be more people watching to make sure social workers follow the rules and only remove children who are really in danger. That's good. Kids should only be scared of normal stuff like monsters under the bed, not grown-ups who are supposed to help them. As our meeting concluded, I realized how profoundly our lives had transformed over the past year. We'd survived corruption, kidnapping, and systematic attempts to destroy our family, but we'd emerged stronger with purpose that extended far beyond our personal experience. Sophie had become a symbol of courage for other children facing family separation. The Emma's Voice Foundation had become a beacon of hope for families fighting corrupt systems, and our relationship with Harrison had evolved into something resembling extended family, bound together by shared trauma and mutual healing. Walking home that evening with Sophie chattering about her school projects and weekend plans, I felt the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose. We'd faced the worst humanity could offer and responded with the best we could give. Sophie would grow up knowing that fighting for justice, even when the odds seem impossible, can change the world for other people who need protection. 1 year to the day after Sophie's accident, I stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Capitol Hotel, preparing to address the National Conference on Family Court Reform. The audience included family court judges, social workers, attorneys, and advocates from across the country, all gathered to discuss implementing Sophie's law and preventing future corruption in child protection services. Sophie sat in the front row beside Harrison, wearing her favorite purple dress and the confident smile of a 9-year-old who'd learned that speaking truth could change the world. Dr. Torres sat nearby, having flown in from Boston, where she now directed a national program for treating trauma in children affected by custody disputes. Ladies and gentlemen, a year ago, my daughter Sophie nearly lost her life in a car accident caused by the criminal actions of people we trusted. But the accident itself wasn't the real tragedy. The real tragedy was discovering that an entire network of corrupt officials was systematically destroying families for profit. The audience listened with rapt attention as I shared our story from the initial betrayal by Marcus through the systematic corruption of Diana Foster and Judge Brennan to Sophie's courage in testifying against the network that had tried to steal her future. Sophie's experience led to the largest child trafficking prosecution in federal history. 137 arrests across 15 states, 67 children reunited with their families, $12 million in stolen assets recovered for victim compensation. But statistics don't capture the real victory, The real victory is that children like Sophie will grow up in a system with safeguards against corruption. Future families will have protections we didn't have, and vulnerable children will be defended by people who understand that family preservation isn't just policy, it's sacred. I paused to look at Sophie, whose encouraging smile gave me strength to continue. The people who tried to destroy our family believed that money was more powerful than love, that corruption was more effective than truth, and that fear was stronger than courage. They were wrong about all of it. Love gave me the strength to fight when fighting seemed hopeless. Truth provided the foundation for justice even when justice seemed impossible. And courage, Sophie's courage in particular, became contagious, inspiring dozens of other families to stand up and demand accountability. Agent Coleman joined me on stage to present the final numbers from the federal investigation and prosecution. The network operated for 6 years before Sophie's testimony provided the evidence we needed to dismantle it completely. During that time, they generated $47 million in revenue by stealing children from loving families and selling them to unknowing adoptive families. But today, every one of those 67 children has been reunited with their biological families. Every corrupt official has been prosecuted, and new federal oversight ensures this type of systematic corruption cannot operate undetected again. Harrison took the podium to announce the expansion of the Emma's Voice Foundation into a national organization with offices in 12 states. Emma Catherine Walsh would have been 11 years old today. She would have loved Sophie Martinez and been proud of the courage that saved so many other children. The foundation bearing Emma's name has successfully intervened in 43 cases of wrongful child removal and prevented countless families from experiencing the trauma we survived. Sophie asked to address the audience, stepping up to a microphone adjusted to her height with the composure of someone who'd learned to transform trauma into advocacy. My name is Sophie Martinez, and I'm 9 years old. When I was 7, bad people tried to separate me from my mommy forever. They lied about her and tried to make everyone believe she didn't take good care of me. But my mommy never gave up fighting for me, even when her own family turned against her, and everyone said she should just accept what was happening. She taught me that when something is wrong, you have to speak up, even if you're scared. Now I help other kids whose families are being hurt by bad social workers and mean judges. I tell them that their parents love them and that good people are fighting to keep families together. The most important thing I learned is that real families don't give up on each other even when everything seems hopeless. My mommy proved that love is stronger than any bad people who try to tear families apart. The audience rose in sustained applause as Sophie returned to her seat, having delivered her message with the clarity that only children possess when speaking fundamental truths. Dr. Torres concluded the presentation by announcing the opening of 7 new pediatric trauma centers equipped to provide both medical care and legal advocacy for children caught in custody disputes. These centers ensure that medical treatment and family preservation work together rather than being manipulated by people with ulterior motives. Every child deserves both physical healing and family stability. As the conference concluded, families who'd been helped by the Emma's Voice Foundation gathered for a reception celebrating their successful reunifications. Children who'd been separated from their parents for months or years played together while their parents shared stories of survival and recovery. Miguel Torres, now 9 and thriving, had traveled with his mother Jessica to thank Sophie personally for inspiring their fight to stay together. "Sophie, you were so brave when you told the truth about what happened to you. It helped my mommy prove that the social worker was lying about our family too." "Miguel, your mommy was brave too. She never stopped trying to bring you home." Harrison presented Sophie with a special recognition from the Department of Justice, honoring her contribution to the largest child protection reform in federal history. "Sophie, this citation recognizes your courage in speaking truth that saved not just your own family, but dozens of other families who were facing the same injustices. You change the world by refusing to stay silent. As the evening wound down, Sophie and I walked through the hotel gardens, reflecting on the journey that had brought us from our worst nightmare to this moment of victory and purpose. "Mommy, do you think Daddy Marcus is sorry for what he did?" "I think he is, sweetheart, but being sorry doesn't erase the hurt he caused. The important thing is that you're safe now and other children are safe because of your bravery. Will you keep helping other families even when I'm grown up?" "As long as there are families who need help, I'll keep fighting for them. It's become my purpose, just like yours is helping other kids who are scared." "Good. Everyone deserves to have someone who won't give up on them." Sophie's simple wisdom captured everything we'd learned through our ordeal. The criminals who'd targeted our family had believed that isolated, vulnerable people could be destroyed without consequence. They'd underestimated the power of love, the strength that emerges from protecting the innocent, and the courage that spreads from one person to another when someone refuses to surrender to injustice. Our story had become proof that ordinary people facing extraordinary corruption could fight back successfully when they refused to accept defeat. Sophie's testimony had saved her own family and dozens of others, while inspiring legislation that would protect future generations of children. Walking back toward the hotel where Harrison waited to drive us home, I felt profound gratitude for the transformation our suffering had undergone. The worst experience of our lives had become the foundation for the most meaningful work we could imagine. Sophie skipped ahead on the pathway, her energy and optimism unchanged, despite everything she'd survived. She'd learned that adults could be both terrifyingly cruel and remarkably brave, that systems could be corrupted but also reformed, and that speaking truth, even when it's difficult and scary, can change the world for people who need protection. "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we get ice cream on the way home?" "Of course, baby girl. What flavor do you want?" "Strawberry with extra sprinkles." Some things thankfully remained beautifully normal and uncomplicated. Sophie was still a 9-year-old who loved ice cream, still trusted that her mother would take care of her needs, and still believed in simple pleasures after surviving extraordinary trauma. As we drove home through the city lights, Harrison reflected on how Emma's memory had been honored through our fight for justice. "Emma would have been so proud of both of you. She always believed that standing up to bullies was the most important thing kids could do." "She was right," Sophie said sleepily from the back seat. "Bullies think they can hurt people and nobody will stop them. But when somebody brave says no, everything changes." What did we learn from all of this, Sophie? We learned that real families never give up on each other. We learned that telling the truth is scary but important. And we learned that when bad people try to hurt kids, good people have to fight back. What else? We learned that love is stronger than money, truth is stronger than lies, and courage is contagious when somebody decides to be brave first. Sophie's summary captured the essence of our journey from victimization to victory, from helplessness to empowerment, from isolation to community with other families fighting similar battles. Our story had begun with abandonment, betrayal, and systematic attempts to destroy our family through corruption and greed. It had ended with justice, healing, and purpose that extended far beyond our personal experience. Sometimes the most profound transformation emerges from the deepest pain when ordinary people discover extraordinary strength they never knew they possessed. Sometimes fighting back against impossible odds succeeds in ways that change not just individual lives, but entire systems that affect thousands of other people. And sometimes when a mother refuses to surrender her child to corruption and a little girl finds the courage to speak truth that exposes criminal conspiracies, the world becomes a safer place for all the families who come after them. The greatest victories aren't always the ones that make headlines. Sometimes they're as simple as a child coming home to her mother, a corrupt system being exposed and reformed, and love proving stronger than the forces that try to destroy it. Have you ever had to fight against a system that seemed designed to work against you? What gave you the strength to keep going when everything felt hopeless? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire another family facing their own impossible battle. If this story moved you, please like this video to help it reach other families who might need hope and encouragement. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things to protect the ones they love. And share this video with anyone who believes that love and courage can triumph over corruption and cruelty. Remember that your voice matters. Your story has power, and standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult and scary, can change the world for people who need protection. Thank you for listening to Sophie's story and mine. May you always find the courage to fight for the people and principles that matter most to you, and may you never underestimate the power of one person's decision to refuse surrender when justice is at stake. Stay strong, keep fighting, and never give up on love.